Okay, this is one of our router tables, and we have a lot of router tables in the shop. And routers and a table are a little more stable, so they're a little safer to use, but they can still be quite dangerous. Okay? And one of the problems with some of them, like this one, is that the setup here is set to cut a groove. And so I can't have a guard over the top because I've got to come straight through here with my board. And I've got to be able to get a push stick over it. So it makes it a little more dangerous to run. So usually we'll use one of these push sticks. Idiot Boy likes these, right? And so these push sticks are really good for this application because if it slips and falls there, it can't cut through here and get into my finger. Okay, because this is too thick. So as you run your boards through, on all of our routers, the router tables, so routers can spin different directions. So they can either go clockwise or counterclockwise. Okay, all of ours are the same though. So they all spin the same way in our shop, which means that they all spin this direction. Okay, so your feed against rotation will always be as you face the cutter head like this, from your right to your left is the way you'll feed your wood through. Okay. Now sometimes we do something that's called back milling. And what back milling is we back mill stuff because we want to avoid chips in the wood. So what happens is when the cutter head's coming around this way, as your wood comes through, the cutter head's like your thumbnail, right? And it picks up the wood right on this edge and then it pulls it out away from the wood. And that can cause splintering and chips. So when you back mill, you run in the opposite direction. And so when the cutter head goes in the back mill, so our head cuts this way, you're feeding with rotation. So the cutter head is now cutting down into the wood as opposed to pulling out away from the wood. And so it makes a cleaner cut, but it also wants to throw your wood. Now Idiot Boy, who tried to show a demonstration of how a kickback can happen on a router, he looked like he was having a spasm trying to get it to kick out. It really will kick out, but it doesn't go flying across the shop unless you are really dumb, okay? But it does kick, and so you've got to hold it. So the way you control it when you're back milling is by maintaining pressure against the back fence. And so you create a drag, and then the cutter bed brings it across. Typically, we don't make a final cut with a back mill. All we do is remove excess wood, so we're not pulling a great big chunk of wood out when we're cutting. And then we make our final pass, we'll go back front ways, okay? And so we'll pull it across, and the first time you do it, it takes a lot of feel. And so I'll be there helping you to do that, so you can learn what it feels like, so you realize how much resistance you have to put on it, okay? Most of our router cuts that we make, we're just doing a decorative edge on the edge of a piece of wood, okay? So when you cut those, you'll cut the end grains first. We don't back mill the end grains, just the side grains. So you cut the end grains first, and then you do the side grains, and then you go back and finish your cuts. Okay? If you have a large cut or large cutter head, you cannot back mill. It's dangerous. Okay? It's only for small cutter heads, like a round over or decorative edge, that's only moving like at the most a ½ inch of wood. Okay? And it's just a 1/4 inch in, a ½ inch over, so it's just taking a little decorative edge. If you've got a bigger cutter, you do not want to be back milling. That's dangerous. Okay? So you always want to go with rotation. So the other way that you can avoid chips is by using a spacer. So if you've got a bigger cutter and you want to avoid blowout by not taking a big piece, you put a spacer block in the front and you cut it, and then you take that out so that you move it in about 1/4 inch at a time, so you're not taking such a big cut in a single pass. So that's the way you can avoid that when you're cutting. So safety on the router tables are pretty simple. Number one, don't stick your finger in the blade. Okay, it'll turn it into a hamburger. Okay, that seems simple, but if you're not careful about where you put your hands, it's easy to slip. Okay, so that's why I recommend using push sticks, especially if you're a beginner, because if you slip and hit the blade, it just cuts the push stick, and I don't care. All right. So if you have your hand here and you're pushing it through by hand, never push directly in front of the blade. So you can push over here, and then as you get to the blade, you get your hand over to the other side of the blade, and you continue to apply pressure against the fence. That works out fine. Because if the board disappears and you slip, it'll hit the fence, not the blade. Okay? So it's really important that you pay attention to those things, but I would much rather use the push stick to maintain pressure. But push sticks are hard to control your wood with as effectively as your hands. And that's why people want to use their hands. Okay? I use my hands because I can control the wood better. Okay? And I would love to say I've never even had a close call, but I have slipped on a piece and stopped my finger within a 1/4 inch of a moving blade, and I can feel the wind on my finger. Okay? It's really scary because if you hit it, your finger just goes and it's gone. So we need to be very careful with our routers. We don't do a lot of cuts with routers and router tables, but again, if you use your push sticks, you're going to be really safe with them. Okay? Before you turn a router on, you want to make sure that everything is set right. Okay? If you change a router bit, you always unplug it before you start changing the bit so it doesn't accidentally come on you. Okay? And you need to make sure you tighten the bit in before you turn it off. So I did have that happen to me once too. I was putting in a router bit and I had locked it in my just finger tight, right? And then I got distracted. Somebody called me to go do something else. And before I finished it, I went over and answered somebody's question. I did something and forgot about it. And then when I came back like an hour later, I turned it on thinking I had finished the job. And that thing came flying out and hit me on the finger. And it hurt a lot. So I didn't cut my finger off though, so that's good. But it hurt a lot, so it was a big deal. So make sure if you start, you always finish the job, even if you're going to miss another class. You just make sure you get finished, or else take the blade completely out and set it aside so nobody will accidentally think that it's been tightened in. Okay, so that's really important on routers. Other than that, they're safe. You'll be just fine with them. Okay? Some of them have guards, and if they can use a guard, we will use a guard. Okay? But some places we can't. So if we're doing a decorative edge, we'll have a guard on the front, hold your wood, so you can't get your hand into the blade. So the only types that we typically use where we don't have a guard is when we're doing, a lot of times we're doing a rabbet cut that requires us to keep a push stick directly over the cut. Okay? And this is one of those setups that I have where I have to have the pressure right here, and I can't use